Start with that video.
Okay, yeah, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, everyone. So, we are here on Saturday today. It's a bit new for us, but we have an urgent issue that we cannot let it bypass without analyzing it. So, even if it's not the usual day, and the timing as well, we decided, regardless, we decided to bring it. Yeah, so the topic for today is regarding African leaders who are now in Ukraine and also in Russia, actually, currently in Russia, who are leading the peace talk. It's an African initiated solution for the Ukraine Russia war. So for that, we have a lot of things to touch from the overview of the composition of the African leaders who are in this group to it goes to analyzing the 10 points declaration that they have put, what kind of message this will send to the West. And then also, as we always do, we will bring you the Pan-African perspective of it by, analyzing their declaration and the nature of it so far as it is. So our friend is here, Kwame Gonza, as usual, to bring us all this. Welcome, Kwame.
Thank you so much, Malit, and greetings to everyone who's up there watching. As we have mentioned consistently, Connect Africa is here to bring you updates and analysis and education and information regarding what matters, especially
Mhm.
Africans. That is why it is very important that you pay attention, you who are watching the channel. But on top of that, we are not only doing the analysis, but we are also engaged on the ground into, carrying out the work that we think will bring about the unification of Africa and making Africa great, the Africa which we want. So if you are out there and you think that you can contribute to this process, we invite you to come and work with us because we are already working with other numerous organizations like the PLO Lumumba Foundation. We are working closely with it. We are working closely with the Africa Continental Unity Party. We are working with numerous other organizations like Global African Congress, which is a diaspora organization also. So whether you are in the diaspora, whether you are on the continent, you can come and reach out to us. You can send us a message and see how you can contribute. But you can start with liking the video and sharing this video and also inviting other people to subscribe to the channel. If you have not subscribed yourself to the channel, please subscribe to the channel because this is very important. This is the very beginning. This is the least you can do immediately to support the cause for the struggle for African liberation, total liberation in its entirety as Nkrumah envisioned it. That means economic emancipation,
Mhm.
which we have not attained yet. And we have not attained that status on the global stage whereby Africans are respected, whereby we are given dignity. That is why you see that we are bullied, like some of the things even which we are going to see happen because we are not respected. The things which happened in Ukraine, some of them, in Poland, our leaders were going and they were disrespected. So all this disrespect comes because we are not powerful and strong as a people. So that is what we want to address in our generation. We are going to do that in our generation. But you can start with supporting us on this channel and then reach out to us also. If you have any other way of contributing, if you want to contribute via PayPal, you want to send us one Ghana cedi, you want to send us $1, £1, either
Mhm.
way, any way which you want to contribute, come out and contribute to this cause. We want to thank you for keeping with us, for loving the channel, for supporting the channel so much. We thank you so much and we appreciate you. Thank you so much, Malet.
Thank you very much, Kwame, actually, for making time, both of us to be here, and especially for you, to go all through the points that you think our people need to be informed, that this should not skip us. We should not overlook anything. We should not let the mainstream crowd us, come and propagate us with all their lies. Before that, we need to inform our people, of course, based on our own research. So thank you to you particularly. Now, without further ado, let's go into it. I think it's better to start for our audience by analyzing the composition of the leaders, the members who are taking part in this peace talk, and then what kind of solution, really, like just in general, we're going to go in detail in it, and what kind of solution are they going to, is this African initiated group is going to bring, but we will go in detail on that later on. But give us just a general view, because originally in this Connect Africa, I think 2 weeks ago, when it was launched that this African originated peace initiative will be held, we have reported that supporting it, now that from African solution to African problems, going to African solution to global challenges. And then some of the leaders, some of the things that we have seen, some of the leaders are represented by their presidents, some of them by their delegates. But I'm not going to go in detail. You give us the whole overview of this composition. Back to you, Kwame.
Thank you so much, Malit. Please allow me to play a certain video just to give us a little bit of background on what is going on in this mission, during this mission that is going on currently.
War cannot go on forever. All wars have to be settled and come to an end at some stage. And we are here to communicate a very clear message that we would like this war to be ended. We say so because this war is having a negative impact on the African continent and indeed on many other countries around the world. As a continent, we are being negatively affected in terms of our economies. The prices of commodities have gone up, particularly grain and fertilizer. And the prices of fuel have also gone up. And this is a consequence of the war that is ongoing. And it is for this reason that we are also here, that it is in our collective interest that the war should come to an end. The third point we would like to put forward is that we would like to see a de-escalation of the conflict. The escalation of the conflict on both sides does not enhance the peace process. So we would like to see the conflict being de-escalated as we find a way to peace. The fourth point, which has also been covered in a number of other proposals, is that we recognize the sovereignty of countries in terms of the UN Charter. And yes, in terms of that charter, we believe that all of us should work in terms of internationally recognized principles. And it is for that reason that we would like to submit that we recognize the sovereignty of countries in terms of that charter. This is the time for both parties to negotiate an end to this war, because this war is causing a great deal of instability and harm to various countries around the world. And we as African countries are feeling the impact of this war. So this is what we have come here to share with you. And I'd like to end by saying this is a historic mission. The African continent, represented here through the 7 countries, has never really been involved in a mission of this sort. So we would like to say that we've taken this step, believing that, yes, we can contribute, and would like to thank you for giving us the time to listen to what we've got to say, but more importantly, we want to listen to you as well.
Thank you once again, those who are watching us, and thank you, Malet. I would just like to start with correcting a little bit President Cyril Ramaphosa on what he said, that this is the first of this kind that Africa has engaged in. This is not the first time historically that Africa has engaged in settling external wars. We remember in 1966, I don't know whether he has just forgotten, it's probably that he has just forgotten it, but in 1966, in March, I think it is in March or February or March, when Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown, he was removed from power. He had gone to Hanoi. He had gone to Hanoi in Vietnam to settle and try to bring an end to the war, to the Vietnam War. That war was between the Vietnamese and the United States, which had invaded them. The United States was supporting the South, and the North was fighting against the United States in this case. Just like how you are seeing today, that the United States is supporting Ukraine, which Ukraine was part of Russia. So in the Vietnam War, the United States was trying to separate Vietnam, because what these people are fighting for here, what you are looking at that Russia is fighting for, is that Russia looks at this territory as a backyard, its backyard, just like how the United States, rational people have looked at this and said that if you came and put missiles and tried to claim any territory which is at the border of the United States will react in the same way. That is the rational thinking of normal people. People who are thinking about this issue rationally. So the United States moved 10,000s of miles from its home and went to Vietnam to attack Vietnam, to support southern Vietnam, to try to separate the northern part of Vietnam from the south. And this war, when it was happening, Nkrumah, as the African head of state, was being looked at during that period as almost the president of Africa. He was being looked at as the president of the United States of Africa, because he was pushing for the unification of Africa. Now, Nkrumah was invited to settle the differences and to try to bring an end, to negotiate, to bring the tables, to bring the warring parts to the negotiation table. So that was the first time, actually, when Africa engaged in settling, external, wars. So I would say that this initiative that Africa is carrying out today is the second initiative in addition to what Nkrumah did in 1966 before they overthrew him from power. Now, the team, the African Union came together, the African leaders came together to put together a team and a program, or what you would call a 10-point program. That program, you can find it on my channel, Africa Reimagined, the 10-point program of Africa towards Ukraine. You can search for it, Africa Reimagined, and you find that 10-point program. Now, we put together a team, and it went with this program. Of course, which program we are going to look at briefly. And the team was a composition of countries from both, actually from all regions of the continent. From the south, we have countries like South Africa, who was the leader of this, a mission, who was President Cyril Ramaphosa. We have President Hikilema from Zambia. we have a leader, from Senegal, President Macky Sall, who is the immediate chairperson of the African Union. Is very important. Whenever the African Union, the African leaders have made it that whenever the African Union is going anywhere for a mission, the president or the chairperson of the rotating chairperson of the African Union, the current and the previous, they have to move together to go and represent Africa. So that is what we are seeing. We are seeing that the president also of Comoros, the Union of Comoros, who is the current chairperson of the African Union, President Hazali, is also on the team. We have representatives. So we have the West, we have the East, we have Uganda on that team also. Is part of it. We have the central part of the continent also. We have Congo Brazzaville also was represented on this team. So we have a composition, and the president of Algeria actually had also just left Moscow a few days ago when there was I think it is the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, which happened also in Russia. So you can see that the whole continent has sort of been represented in this team. And what did they try to emphasize? What did the African leaders try to emphasize? What did they bring on the table? Their emphasis has been the stoppage of the war at all costs. They coming to the table and negotiating for a solution, because they have understood that regardless of how much they fight, this war will end on the table. All of them are going to end up sitting on the table to negotiate to bring the war to the end. So why not start negotiations immediately? And they spoke about the releasing of, for example, prisoners, the releasing of children, providing safe way, for example, for evacuation of civilians who are, trapped in the war zones, and they, of course, generally the stopping of the fighting, and then the recognition. Of course, there was the mention of the recognition of the territorial integrity, or the territorial integrity of countries according to the United Nations Charter. But they did not stop there, to talk only on the side of Ukraine. They also said that it is important, in this point, it is important to recognize the security concerns, the security concerns of nations. And this meant that Russia's grievances with the West also have to be, addressed. And unfortunately, of course, the Western media did not pick up on these points. The only point which they picked up was that Ukraine, the African leaders have said that Ukraine, the war should stop so that Ukraine can supply food, can supply grain to the Africans. So they made it look actually like as if African leaders have gone there to ask for food. They don't have food. And yet African leaders have taken the initiative to help the Europeans in a war which they have started themselves, in the chaos they have, they have started themselves in the chaos which they are into. So they never expected that African leaders would turn up to solve a problem away from the continent. And they never expected that African leaders would be this much assertive to the point that they would come to solve an European problem. So this is what we are seeing, and since of course they face some challenges, and as you know, the Western media is always biased, so they only spoke about the point of grain, because that point was mentioned in, but majority of the 9 points are about stopping the war and the various aspects that should be looked at, the things that should be looked at urgently so that we can stop this war. These are the main points. And then looking beyond the war, of course, they looked beyond the war and talked about reconstruction. These are the things which are important to the world that we need to be talking about. And this is what Africa is presenting on the table.
Thank you very much, Kwame. That's very interesting, especially how the mainstream media have already find its way to twist it and make it look like they went there for begging. Just like, I mean, it's not new, but having seen really and witnessed the nature of it's totally different thing, as you said. The fact that it's African initiated, the fact that even if it's for the second time, but it's still something to be told, but they still chose a different angle to look at it. I mean, we have heard President Ramaphosa, he just said, one of the impacts will be the increase of the price on fertilizer and grain. Another highlight I think I want to make is that we have heard President Ruto, I think it was in May during the Mo Ibrahim Foundation conference in Nairobi, if I'm not mistaken, where he said, who said that Africa is only part of the talk of the problem. Africa can be the solution. We want to be part of the solution. It was a very great deal of assertiveness that was coming out from President Ruto. And he said, like, wait, there will be big change, in terms of delegates that go to represent Russia, Africa, and others. So this seems one of it, Africa bringing and asserting itself. We can be part of the solution. So yeah, that angle is also very interesting.
Yes. So the other thing actually, which is important for people to consider, and maybe one of the things which I would criticize the African leaders in is that that point should have been made clear that we are not here majorly for grain. I think that should have been mentioned. We are here to stop the war. And of course, the Western media knows, but I think there was need to re-emphasize that point and make it clear that Africa does not solely depend on Ukrainian grain. And actually, if we look at the figures, the biggest producers of grain on the international stage, internationally, the biggest producers of grain is China, and Russia is somewhere there. Ukraine is at number 10. If you look at the figures of the World Economic Forum, the biggest producers of grain, Ukraine is at number 10, and it produces only 3% of international grain, wheat. So it is not true. It is not true that Africa entirely depends on Ukrainian grain, and that Africa, if it does not get Ukrainian grain, it cannot survive, or we will not live. This is not true. And actually, to go further, the facts point to this. When President Zelensky called the Ugandan president to tell him about Ukraine, wheat and what, that they will give grain to Uganda, the Ugandan president told him that we have enough food, we don't need grain. That's the number one. So this shows you that we don't depend on Ukrainian grain. But Ukrainian grain is being used by the Western world as a point of blackmail. It is being used to blackmail Africa and then paint a picture around the world that Africa cannot live if the Ukrainian war is going on. So Africa should come behind and support Ukraine.
Yeah.
The other example is Ethiopia. Ever since the war started in Ukraine, Ethiopia started growing its own wheat, for example. And it was able to grow to the point that it is self-sustaining and even export the wheat since 2020 when the war started. So it is not true that we are depending on the grain from Ukraine, because Ukraine is not even among the top 9 producers of grain in the world. So this is something which I would have hoped that African leaders should not have put even in our points, our 10-point program, which we are presenting for the stoppage of war. We should have presented a point like the stoppage of Ukraine war. Stoppage of the Ukraine war and its consequences, such as the nuclear war. We don't want nuclear war to start. This is a very important point. This is a very important point that should have been mentioned in this 10-point program. we cannot afford to have a nuclear war. And this nuclear war will come because of provocations. The provocations that are going on. I mean, how can the United States come 10,000 miles away from its country and come to start fueling a war and chaos? We have seen the fueling of chaos in Middle East all over, and it fueled chaos in Afghanistan and ran away. You see, it has to be held accountable. The West has to be held accountable. It has to be held accountable so that we will not have this chaos continuing. But if we do not hold them accountable, then we are going to continue having this chaos going. They will go on to continue sowing chaos everywhere across the globe. And we are seeing provocations, of course, which we have spoken about here in the South China Sea, so all these problems. So the African leaders, I think the point of the nuclear war should have been raised, because Africa, aside from Europe, this war, if it is fought there and nuclear weapons are used in Ukraine, the first people to suffer, it will be Europe, and the second people will be Africa and the Middle East, because we are very close to this war. And I think that this is a point that should have been raised by the African leaders, instead of talking about the issue of grain, which is just exaggerated and overhyped. The importance of Ukrainian grain is overhyped. And even we know that the grain has not been coming to Africa. Even that grain which has been coming out of Ukraine, only 3% of the grain which has been coming to Africa. 97% of the grain has been going to Europe. So if there's anyone who needs the grain and who is suffering from hunger, it is Europe. It is Europe who is taking this grain. It is not Africa. So that point, I think even the Western media like France 24, DW, Deutsche Welle, they are exaggerating, but they know that they are the ones who are taking the grain, and they are the ones who need the grain. Africa does not need this grain.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kwame, for clarifying that. Yeah, that's called the politics of wheat. It's not something new that they have been doing this. This is what the so-called international organization, the humanitarian organization does all along, the wheat politics, just because they want to support the economy of Ukraine. They bring and dump that grain from Ukraine. That means, what they don't report, this mainstream media, what you have just mentioned, is that they don't tell you that it's bought from Ukraine. It's to support by whose money? By the international organization money. And they bring it to countries like Ethiopia and others. Whenever they come and talk about that, we are sustaining ourselves in food sufficiency, because they don't want us. They want us to live under aid. So they bring it so that the farmers cannot sell their wheat or their grain that they have produced in a proper price. Then when that aid wheat comes, which is, by the way, rotten one, and then it comes in the market, mess up the price, and then the farmers go down, they cannot make profit, and then they cannot make fertilizer. So they keep us, chaining us in that poverty. It's a whole lot of politics of wheat, which can be a topic by itself. But thank you very much for coming back again to clarify that. It's really it just boils something. Now let's talk about, first of all, just to give that basic foundation. Why would even Africa be interested for this war? I know people might say that I'm crazy for asking this. Why would Africa want for the war to be stopped in the first place? Secondly, viewing or assessing those 10 points. So does that make Africa qualified, to solve this kind of solution, just assessing from what they have put out?
I think right now on the international stage, there is no one as qualified as Africa, if you look around, because China started and tried to mediate. You remember that President Xi Jinping called Zelensky to speak to him, and President Xi Jinping, of course, has been speaking to Russia. But China now is being looked at as a country which is supporting Russia, of course, even though, of course, it has, been getting a lot of intimidation and threats from the United States that should not supply weapons and should not help Russia in any way, even though in their arrogancy, they themselves, they are helping Ukraine and they are pouring all types of weapons every day, almost every day they are pouring weapons, and billions of weapons into Ukraine. So they are, in their arrogance, I don't know where they get the audacity, to say to say China should not help Russia, or Russia should not be helped by China. I mean, it's unfortunate. So China is being looked at in that aspect. So it is likely that Zelensky would not want China to mediate this conflict. That is number one. Number two, there is a recognition that there's a new world that is being shaped. And I think that within the African leadership, there's a recognition of that fact that the world is changing and we have to play our part also, and which we welcome very much as Africans. And we have been discussing this numerous times on this channel. And that is why I think that Connect Africa is very important and people have to support it. You have to support us, because these are things which we have been speaking about, that Africa has to assert itself. And this is what we are saying today. So there's a recognition that Africa needs to assert itself because of the global changing order, the world change, the global changing order. We have seen BRICS, we have analyzed those things, BRICS, the declines of the United States and Europe, the economic problems, that, economic depression. Germany is under recession right now, economic problems in Europe. So there's a recognition of that, I think, by African leaders, that we need to assert ourselves on the global stage. And hence, the other actions which you have seen, like you mentioned, President William Ruto speaking about that Africa doesn't need to be told what to do. It doesn't need to be patronized. Do not patronize us. We have the solutions. If you are talking about problems on the global stage, whether you're talking about climate change, which President Ruto was addressing even when he was speaking at the at the Pan-African Parliament in South Africa, in Sandton recently, we have the solutions as Africans. And so this Ukraine war is bringing that out, that we must contribute. And this is a very good sign. I mean, regardless of how it has started, that our leaders have faced the racism and stuff like that, they try to block them and here and there, but it is a good start and it is a way to go. And I think that African leaders need to be commended in this aspect. They need to be commended in this aspect. Now, number four, I think that the threat, I think that is number three, the threat of nuclear war, which we have already also touched a little bit. The nuclear war is a threat to the African continent. If it happens, it will not affect the United States. The United States is a very selfish country, is a very selfish people, that they move 10,000s, thousands of miles away, 10,000 miles away, and you come to start wars in places in which you are not a neighborhood. And when you finish, bringing chaos and problems, then you run away. They are very far. Their people are far, 10,000 of miles away. They are thousands and thousands of miles away. They will not suffer of, the consequences of the problems they are causing. And this is why it is important to support people like, President Macron, when he's talking about, the Europe's strategic autonomy. It is important. And I see even China moving in that direction. So that is number three. Number four, we look at the voting pattern by the, by the African continent, majority of the African continent. You see that the voting pattern in the condemnation of Russia or attempts of siding with Ukraine, the pattern is more, evident, in Africa. So Africa is more qualified than both China and India, because when we look at India, India is still buying the oil from Russia. So Zelensky doesn't look at India kindly. So if anybody is more qualified, it is Africa, who is almost in the middle. Is in the middle, because Europe is not qualified, is involved in the war. The United States is involved in the war. Asia, India would have been the mediator. India is not qualified because it's buying Russia's oil. China is not qualified because it is supporting, is supporting Russia, financial and economically, because if it was not China, by now I think Russia almost would have been decimated economically, because its economy is the one which is supporting the war. And this money is coming from the oil it is selling to both both China and India. So it would have been decimated. So Africa is the most qualified, Africans are the most qualified group, to mediate this conflict, because of the various reasons which I've already mentioned. Thank you very much, Mallet. Mallet, you are muted.
Yeah, okay. I am here now. No, I was saying thank you very much, really, for that, because I know we still have in Africa people who look at, who look at themselves, as an African, as low, that we are not qualified to do anything. So even if it's just, a fact that is there, that's basic, but still it's important to say it loud, and remind people the position that Africa holds currently. Now, let's go to having analyzed, the composition of the members of the African leaders, which are leading this. And then, of course, whether Africa is qualified for this, analyzing the 10 points that they have declared. Now, let's go to the reception itself. Can you elaborate on this? Because from what we hear, there was hindrances, as they were going through Poland. What do we have? What do we say about that? Should it have been a big deal, or yeah?
Thank you, Mallet. The left, the African leaders left Africa with the communication to the government in Ukraine, and also communication with the government in Poland, because the flights cannot go directly to Ukraine, because of the way the airspace has been closed off. Because of the fighter jets and the war and missiles which are flying all over in the airspace. So their aircrafts could not go direct to Ukraine. So the aircraft had to go to Poland, and then from Poland they would take a train which would go to Kiev to meet President Zelensky of Ukraine. But unfortunately, when they reached Poland, even though they had communicated the delegations, they are coming with the media, the security, for example, President Ramaphosa's security, all of them, they have security. President Hichilema also has security. President Macky Sall too has security. All the other heads of state and diplomats, African diplomats who went, they have their security. They are supposed to move with their security. That is how it is. When they reached the airport in Poland, they stopped them from going with their security, with their media. They stopped them from disembarking from the plane. And what they did is, after all that, they only allowed the heads of state and they left all the other people on the plane. I don't know whether they were thinking that the Africans would all of a sudden disappear into Poland and not come back and stuff like that. So yeah, so it's unfortunate, but it has been looked at as racist because of the security, and to a certain extent, you can say that it is possible that there was a hand of all the Western world. There is a hand of all the Western world, because the Africans have decided to come up with this, a solution to a problem which these people have started. There's a fear that the Africans can, what if they solve this problem? What if they mediate and the solution comes? It will be a big blow to the Western world. And so we see that there has been those constant attacks on South Africa to try to blackmail. While the African Union was putting this program together, you remember a few weeks ago, they were trying to say South Africa loaded weapons on a plane, on the boat, and sent weapons to Russia. It supported Russia with weapons. All these were tactics of trying to sabotage Africa's mission in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And when that sabotage, and with South Africa, of course, as the leader, remember South Africa is the leader of this delegation.
Yeah.
Is the one which has led the delegation. So they were trying to sabotage that. And so we see this sabotage extended after failing in South Africa, that sabotage. We see that sabotage extended to the mission itself in Ukraine. When they reach Poland, they try to block them, they try to sabotage them, they try to, to be racist to the leaders. So this is what we are seeing. And it is not a good representation. It is not a good message which the West, sent out. It is racist, as I've said, and it is unfair, and it is disrespectful to the Africans, because these leaders represented 1.4 billion people on the continent. They represented 1.4 billion people on the continent. And comparatively, if you look at how the African leaders have been treated when they reached Moscow, with a lot of respect, all their teams have been allowed to go, to Moscow. Their media, everyone has been allowed to go to Moscow. So it's very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate the way, this Western world, has behaved, looking at the fact that it is trying so much to convince Africans that it can treat us in the same way. If you look at how what happened with the US-Africa summit in 2020, where they were trying to prove that they can treat us better, than the Chinese, or they can treat us in the same way in which the Chinese are treating us. But this continues to bury them in that aspect. It continues to bury them that they have failed, that whatever their attempts at trying to win Africa are failing. These attempts are failing, and they are being exposed day by day that they are hypocrites, because they are saying this a different thing and doing a different thing. So this is what we are seeing, and it is indeed a very bad message. And we are watching, as Africans are watching. And so it is unfortunate that they will turn around and come, to Africa and start crying and say, oh, Africans are this and this. We saw President Macron coming here and claiming that Africans are hypocrites because they were not able to support. They are not supporting Ukraine. They are not support. The Africans are hypocrites, as if we were there when they were starting the war, as if we were there when they were provoking, the war. They are provoking Russia, and they have been doing this. They are provoking Russia. When the war started, is calling Africans, hypocrites. So this is the journey I think that they are going to continue, because Africans, it looks like they have also opened, their eyes. Africans also, we have opened our eyes to understand what is going on the global stage.
Thank you very much, Kwame. It also reminds me, what they are doing. You have mentioned how they were defaming South Africa, that it has supplied weapons to allegedly to Russia, just because, you know, like they're trying everything to sabotage the upcoming summit of BRICS, which already started, which already happened, the foreign ministers, but in August, the presidents will meet in South Africa. And also, if you remember, during the foreign ministers meeting, the West was busy, while there were so important big message, big news that came out from the foreign ministers of BRICS meeting, but all the mainstream cared about was that, it's overshadowed whether Putin will be arrested or not. That was their agenda, like throughout the whole mainstream media. There was nothing else. While they are talking about the new the currency, the new currencies that they are going to launch, or the need of a currency that will balance now what is dominating, meaning the US dollar and the euro and other solution. While, you know, Naledi, Minister Naledi was talking about also other things, that we cannot continue to be bullied. Yeah, this is what they have been doing. Now, if we look at the message or the solutions that's presented by the African leaders, how do you think that the West perceives this? You're muted.
Yeah, I think that the West, of course, is not perceiving this well. This could be, you know, a sign that Africa is reasserting itself, and Africa is, you know, is putting its act together, and it could show that the West has continued to, you know, to accelerate in its decline, because if weaker, you know, countries which are looked at as weak, like African countries, are able to come to the table to try to offer a solution, I mean, this could, of course, symbolize that they don't have that much power, you know, to solve these problems, and of course, the problems which they have created. And it also takes us back to the United Nations, the voting, you know, to condemn Russia. It shows that African leaders are still holding their guns, and they are saying that we will not cave in. We will not cave into the pressure of the West. We have our own mind, and we think that you people are wrong. Like how you see, you know, what you see, the 10-point program, what it was saying, even though we recognize the sovereignty of nations, we recognize the sovereignty of Russia, we also recognize the security concerns. I mean, we recognize the sovereignty of Ukraine. We also recognize the security concerns of Russia, and these concerns have to be addressed. And hence, the visiting of both Ukraine in Kiev and meeting the president, Zelensky, and then also going to Russia to meet the president, President Putin. Yet the West, what it wants Africa to be on its side and condemn and start condemning Russia. And Africa has held and said, no, we will not. We will not move in that direction. So I think this is how they would perceive it. They would perceive it that, you know, our slaves, or, you know, our slaves are going out of the way. And we are losing it on the global stage. And this is how it is going to be, you know, perceived. This is how it is going to be perceived. It is going to be perceived that we are desperate. And of course, they are fighting all they can to hold on to the so-called rules-based order, which has no rules that are written, but it is only them who are making rules for everyone, which rules are outside of the United Nations Charter. So those rules are not written. They have never shown us those rules. When you ask them, show us those rules which you are talking about, that they are the international rules-based order. Are they written anywhere? Give us a document where they are written so that we can know that you are abiding by those rules. And so we should also abide by those rules, so that we can have countries which are signatories to those rules which you are talking about, the rules-based order. Show us where we signed on the rules-based order that you're talking about. Where are those rules? They do not provide those rules which we signed on, that they are claiming is the rules-based order. So it's just the colonial system that they are talking about, that is, they are hiding behind this so-called rules-based order. And it is operating outside the United Nations Charter. So they will not perceive this very well, because their interest is to continue to push the colonial system which they are operating on right now.
But take an example. If we look at particularly, they seem, these African leaders, very optimistic about bringing the solution. But the fact that also they have gone beyond and talking about reconstruction. Do you think the West will care about this? I'm not sure if there's any peace who tried to mediate talked about this far, but do you think, does this even hold the water for the West? Because all we see is that they don't care. They prefer to see another angle. I mean, they're not really trying to value what these people are doing.
Yeah, I think that the event itself holds it holds significance. It holds significance, at least in the eyes of the Africans. Mm-hmm. I mean, and even their population, the population in the Western world, the rational ones, will look at it and say, this is it. The Africans at least are trying to do something also about this situation. And it will continue to solidify in the minds of the people on the global stage. It will continue to solidify in their minds the idea that Africa has said that it is independent from the very beginning, and it is continuing. And also, if positive results come out of these negotiations, it will show that what the United States was claiming, that South Africa is supporting Russia with the weapons, was fake. It was a fake alarm. It was not true. So it will signify that. So that is what I am seeing, that if all goes well, it will show that Africa is emerging and is taking its place, of course. But even in the Western, of course, in the eyes of the Western world, their population, even though in places like the United States, CNN, Fox News, they may not cover it. Yeah. They may not cover this. Yes, they may not cover this meeting that the African leaders have gone there. But in the minds of those, because the internet now is, information is traveling, those people, these are the people who are always on the internet, they will pick up this news and they will be able to understand that Africa is also asserting itself and is trying to provide a solution to the global problems, regardless of the problems, of course, which we face at home. You can talk of South Africa. Of course, South Africa right now has energy problems. We still have problems in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We still have problems in Sudan. But we do not need to wait to solve all our problems before we can solve the international problems. I think that is one thing which Africans also need to understand, that we do not need to solve our problems entirely before we can be global citizens, because we are living in the global village. And anything which happens anywhere, if you are still solving the poverty problems before you attend to the Ukraine war, you will find that they will throw a nuclear bomb and it will come and kill you because you did not participate in, in solving the problem. The nuclear bomb will come and kill you while you are fighting poverty. So instead, you would have first gone to solve this nuclear problem, which would have caused you to die in poverty when you do not have even a chance to fight the poverty. So I think that this is a very good initiative, and it is a very good sign, that Africa is emerging.
Thank you for that. If there is anyone really that talks about again and again highlighting the need for Africa to assert itself, was you. Not because I'm working with you and we always talk about this, but because I have heard other channels who analyze and read. There's no such thing. I mean, you always try to shine a light the need to assert for Africa to assert itself in the global stage. Now that we have seen Africa is bringing its solution, a homegrown solution, but to solve such a global challenge, one of the greatest challenge in the planet that we are living, because the talks include all about nuclear war. Is it what we are expecting? Is this what we needed as an African to see? And what's, as a final of our discussion, of course, what's your message for Africans? Hold on there. Let me just read some of our viewers, who are here, who are bearing with us. And if you want to add, maybe based on what you said, you might add. So these are our usual families. First of all, welcome Easy D. I want to give a shout out. He's here first. CNS also. He's here. Some of them, they are telling Black. They are telling us, some of them, as they drive, they are listening. Thank you very much. So on top of it, please share the message. This is knowledge. So we want to empower each other through knowledge. Yeah. From what they said, for example, they said related to the reception, the contrast in reception accorded to African leaders in the two countries says everything. Yeah, so I think we agree on that one. EZD says Russia will never start a nuclear war. It will be started by the West. Everyone knows that. If there is any question, I'm trying to see. I think they ask a question and then you kind of covered it. So then later on, they agree. What happened in Poland, that has been answered. It's like the more the West trying to impress. It's like the more the West tries to impress Africa, the more blunders they make in the processes. So that is CNDS.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And CNDS continues the narrative that Russia needs weapons from other countries is a smear campaign. Russia is producing more weapons and ammunition than NATO combined. I don't know if this is I haven't heard about this, but EZD says I have heard that Zelensky told the African leaders not to bother going to Russia. I really don't know.
Yeah, it is possible. It is possible because they took them around some of the graves where they claimed that the Russian weapons have killed the people. Of course, the whole process, by Zelensky it was to try to convince African leaders that he is the one who's right, and of course that is what his masters have been telling him, because Ukraine was willing even to negotiate with Russia in the very beginning when this war had just almost started. If they had negotiated actually, because remember they had come to the table, both of them, they had started negotiating. Russia was sending its diplomats, and Ukraine was sending, and they were sitting to negotiate. The West told them not to negotiate. Yet lives would have been spared, property would have been saved. So it is only Africa who's now sort of like a rational thinker right now that we can talk of on the global stage. And if Africa did not participate, God forbid, it would have been very catastrophic. I think Africa is going to play a major role, because Europe is in the war, we've mentioned, the United States is in the war, Russia is in the war. We consider India as, is supporting already on one side, Russia economically, China is supporting. So there's no other person. So Africa has to be involved. It has to be involved. Africa has to be involved in solving this problem. And there's no way out. There's absolutely no way out.
Okay, so you're still going to go and address our final question. Is this, let me rephrase it, is this the Africa we want? African solution to global challenge? Is this the maximum we want to see?
Absolutely, absolutely, like you mentioned, this is what we've been talking about. We want to see Africa reasserting itself. But this position, the only thing we are lacking is that we are moving slow, and we are not responding to the tempo and speed of global events, the speed at which events are happening across the globe. We cannot wait to fast. This is what Nkrumah was speaking about in the 1960s. 1963, the formation of the African Union, the urgency in Nkrumah's speech, which is looked at as the most iconic speech that has ever been given on this African continent, is that the speed at which events were moving in 1963, multiply that speed by more than 100 times right now. Things are moving faster right now even. So if events were moving very fast in 1963, imagine today with technology, 5G, 4G, things are moving rapidly right now. So my only fear is that Africa is not catching up to that tempo. I think this is a good start, of course. It is a good start. We saw the solving of the war. I mean, the war in the northern part of Ethiopia, where the rebels were disturbing. The African Union came in, and we see also this initiative where, this is a very good sign. And it also shows that we will start commanding respect on the international stage. And it could be one way for ourselves to put and resist the United States and say, you cannot solve our problems. We can solve our own problems. Put your military bases off African soil and send them back. France, put your military bases off African soil and send them back. Germany, all these countries who have militaries on the African continent. I think that this could be the right step. So this is the Africa we want. I think this is the Africa we want, not only that solves these international problems and domestic problems, but a unified Africa with one government. That is the Africa which we are working for.
Thank you very much, Kwame. Yeah, a very good ending to it. So Izzy and CND seems to confirm with you regarding how President Zelensky was told not to negotiate. So Izzy says, yes, Kwame, the British PM at that time, Boris Johnson, told him, I think Zelensky, not to negotiate. And then Tiendes also says, yes, when the agreement was ready in April 2022, Johnson flew to Kiev and told Zelensky not to sign onto it. Yeah, that's how it is. They are entitled, to do whatever they want. But when it comes to Africa, then they think, yeah, but that's what it is. We have to keep doing what we are doing. It's very interesting. I thought I'm going to bring something, and I keep on. I forgot, I think. But yeah, we have covered. All the questions are covered. It's good. We have seen Still not yet a good crowd, but we have seen better than other times. So please, how you can support us is please go and support. We want to be here as often as possible during the week, because as just Kwame said now in his last address, the dynamic that the world is going through, the political change, I mean, in every angle, it's something that we cannot afford to let it pass without being analyzed and have that Pan-African perspective. Otherwise, we will just sacrifice ourselves to the media, to the mainstream media, and go away, with that propaganda. So that's not something, we wish to do to ourselves and to our younger generation. Somebody W, he's the last commenter here. How can we resist the West given their political and economic methods to infiltrate our societies? And then another one said, he said, what do you think about Japan for future? Is it going to West or Asian? Asian Unite.
Japan.
Yeah.
Did he talk about Japan?
Yeah, he's talking about Japan. That's the last question. The other one was saying, how can we resist the West, when they have their economic and political muscle to infiltrate everywhere? So
how can we do what?
How can we resist the West given their political and economic muscles to infiltrate our societies?
Yeah, of course. Recently, NATO tried to convince India to join NATO as an organization, and of course, the idea is to fight against China. All this war which you are seeing, they left Afghanistan because they were being overwhelmed by the problems. Remember, when they were in Afghanistan, Russia was coming in Africa to help various African countries. Why? It's because the people in Africa, from our analysis which we did here, the people in Africa are tired of the neo-colonial system, which is a colonial system in itself. It's just neo-colonialism means new colonialism. So it is a colonial system that it is not bringing anything to the African people. Instead, what we are experiencing is our resources are being taken to the West to build the West. Mm-hmm. So while they were distracted in Afghanistan, Russia went and helped actually Syria. They wanted to destroy Syria. And Russia went and helped Syria, and the government was saved. The same thing which they did in Afghanistan and they did in Iraq. They went to Libya and did the same thing. In 1993, they went to Somalia and they did the same thing. They overthrew the government and destroyed the country. So their strategy is destruction and colonize. Because where there is chaos, then you can extract the resources and go and build Europe, build Canada, build Australia, build the United States. Have you not wondered why these places are so successful? All of them were Anglo-Saxons, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, all of Europe, America, the United States, Iceland. Have you ever wondered why they are successful and all the other countries are struggling? Is it because those people, they don't think well, they are not intelligent? So these are all things which, of course, we can talk about extensively. But where there's chaos is where they thrive and they take resources. So while they were distracted in Afghanistan, Russia came and started helping people who are fighting against the colonial system in Africa, in Mali, Burkina Faso. So they saw this as a big problem. And yet, on the other hand, China is expanding rapidly, is growing rapidly. So what they want to do is that they wanted to leave Afghanistan, come and fight, provoke Russia into war, fight against Russia and defeat Russia. And then when Russia is defeated, it will not be able to help China to supply some of the most advanced weapons, because Russia now would have used up all the weapons. Like, for example, the S-400, which is a defense weapon system. And China would not have these. You see, China has huge manufacturing capacity, but it doesn't have access to the most advanced, war weapons. When you're talking about the weapons which Russia has, like this S-400, S-300, which are all defense, as you have surface to air missiles, which will defense for airspace. So they want to defeat Russia and then go to China. And China is very much aware of this. Why do they want to defeat China? They have been blackmailing China and throwing, using all kind of propaganda, to badmouth China, is because they want China to decline. They don't want China to overtake them, because China has overtaken them in purchasing power. If you look at GDP in purchasing power terms, China is the biggest economy right now with $30 trillion. And the United States is at $25 trillion in purchasing power terms. So they are looking at China as a threat. They are looking at China as a huge threat. And they have mentioned this on live televisions, in their documents, the various United States presidents, they have mentioned this. So they wanted to fight against China and then come back and finish through the domination, complete domination of Africa. Because Africa and Latin America, which is South America, they are the only places which are remaining on Earth where you can extract the resources to rebuild the United States. United States, the infrastructure is collapsing and it is declining. It's the same with Europe. You see the demonstrations in France, Germany is in recession. They want to rebuild the United States right now. That is the campaign that they are doing. But those resources are in Africa. Those resources are in Africa and Latin America. So you have to remove China, you have to remove Russia, so that you can continue the extraction of resources from Africa and prevent industrialization in Africa. But we can fight them. India itself, when we look at it, India, its economy is less than the combined economy of Africa. India is around $3.3 trillion or 3.4. Africa is around $3.5 trillion combined GDP. But India, even though they were convincing it to join NATO and it refused, the prime minister, just this week, the foreign minister, India's, foreign minister, Mr. Jashkanda was resisting. India was resisting and said that those ideas are outdated of saying that India should join this type of coalition. But India is just, its economy is I think, is around 3.2. It's not even up to 3.3. It's around $3.2 trillion. Africa has a much bigger economy of $3.5 trillion. So you ask, how can we resist them when they have this economic power? We can if we are unified. We can if we are unified, because if we unify, and that is why we are fighting for this. That is why for us, the idea of a unified Africa is a reality. It is not a dream. These are ideas which our ancestors fought for the last 300 years. Marcus Garvey, came up with this dream. Nkrumah actualized and changed the dream into a vision and brought it to Africa. So for us, it is a reality, something which is achievable, because other places have achieved it. So this is the only solution for us. And that is why we are working. That is why we are working tirelessly on it, without resting. I think the second question, what was the second question, which he asked? There's a gentleman who asked the second question.
It's about Japan. Where do you think Japan's future is?
Of course, Japan. Absolutely. Japan is with the United States. Japan is part of NATO. Japan is part of NATO. So all the meetings, when they were carrying out these meetings, you remember the G7 summit happened in Japan, in Hiroshima. So, and they hosted even Zelensky. So the G7 summit was about European countries, with the exclusion of the global south, including China and Russia. And of course, India was invited as an observer. India was just an observer. So India is not part. So the majority, the biggest part of the global population is not part. Japan is part of that. Why? Because Japan itself is a colonizer. Japan went and colonized China. And that is why they fear China very much. They still have that fear of China. And China has actually never forgiven them. So they see that the only way to protect themselves is to ally up with other colonizers. That is the only way to protect themselves. So Japan is part of that colonial legacy.
I am sure W and Zraya Fikri that your questions have been answered. Kwame, also we have covered all the questions that we have prepared for you tonight. He went and, he's always a selfless person. He likes actually people who ask, who try to understand, who shows interest. That's him. So he has no limit. What do we have? As for Mamo, Russia is on the right side of history. Russia doesn't need any military assistance from any country, including China. They have the most advanced weapons ready to be used and also in battle. EZD, yes, the petrol dollar is quickly becoming a thing of the past. Countries can now purchase oil in their own currencies. A multipolar world order that gives everyone an equal voice and respect. So the one who questioned W, I think, regarding how we resist that infiltration, this comment by EZD will add to what Kwame said as well. Thanks to this again, thanks to the sanction of neo-colonialists, the economy of Russia is growing. The people in Russia are thanking now Joe Biden for putting the sanctions. The Russian oligarchs reinventing their money. Sandy says, yes, Kwame, G7 is a club of colonial countries. Yes. Thank you guys, really, thank you very much. It really makes it different when we have you here, and especially when you participate, when you ask question or whatever comments, just that's important, because it's information, it's knowledge, it shouldn't be just kept to us, it should be shared. So what you can do is, if you want to us, I put in the chat section, please go if you want, of course, support. It's not by force, but if you want us to be here, it's also important. So please go and support us through our PayPal account, which I have put there, and also super sticker, super chat, you can donate, but most importantly, please share as soon as this video is through. Share this link to the people, to your network that you think will be interested. Especially, there are African groups everywhere: Facebook, WhatsApp, any social media. Share it there. It's really, really important. Then you will make a difference. We have to empower it. It seems a cliche, but it's really important. Education is not really the system education, but what we educate ourselves. You hear Kwame every time here, he analyzes, he brings us, he introduces us those books, all of the Kwame Nkrumah books, but also others who wrote about Africa, which you don't get from the other, from the mainstream. So please, don't keep it to yourself, share it to the people. So that's Saturday night, unreservedly, in the midst of our daily life, we said that, and thanks to most importantly to Kwame, that we are here because we wanted to bring you here. So now you know anything that comes from the mainstream media, you know how to encounter it. W, you asked our email. Let me just put it here. Connect Africa 56@gmail.com. You can email us by this for any question you have. What other things is left? I think that's it. Yeah, please go and visit also our website, which is still under development, but you can go and check connecttoafrica.org, connecttoafrica.org. On the first chat section, we have I have put it there, and also our brother who is really extensively writing about Africa, Pan-Africanism, about the different regions in the continent, africainterest.org. please check out that as well. And also Kwame's YouTube channel, it's called Africa Reimagined. I put it there. I think I put the name. I don't think I have put the link. So I will put the link as well. Please check it there. Also, he is here regularly. We are family. But also he has his channel where he shares different things, which is important, and he put it on his channel. So go and subscribe, be a family, and check it out. And that's it. So have a good evening, unless Kwame have something to say.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for watching, and I want to send greetings to Sinovia. We have not seen her in a while.
I hope she
I don't
will
know.
hear us.
Yeah, we have to send greetings to her because she's been supporting the channel very, very much. So regards to her, and regards to all of the people who asked the questions and all people who were watching. We really appreciate your support, and we ask you to continue in that spirit. So once in a while, if you want to participate in the conversation, we will also be sending you the link so that you can join us in the studio in these discussions. If you have very strong, yes, if you have strong views, or you have your suggestions which you want to make, we can invite you. So you can write us an email, and then we will invite you. But we want to thank you very much. Go out there. Support all the Pan-African organizations, support all Pan-African candidates who are standing for presidents, across the continent. Don't support, presidents who are not Pan-African, in their outlook. This is the continent which we want. We want a continent which is driven by African interests and African ideals, just like what the Prime Minister Ahmed Abe mentioned, that we want to build a continent, which is shaped and driven by African ideals and the dreams of our forefathers. That's the Africa we are shaping. And let us do it in this generation of ours. It can be done. These ideas can be done because other nations have done them before. Thank you very much, Malet. And good night, good evening, and good day to everyone, everywhere where you are across the globe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will meet again. We do it, as we said, every Tuesday and Thursday, but today was special. It's an urgent matter for us. So we have to break that down, this African leaders in Ukraine and Russia, because the mainstream media of the West is taking it left and right and confusing our people. So we felt an obligation to save our people, our brothers and sisters. And otherwise, for what we have this platform? It's for such reasons. That's it. But on Monday again, which is another irregular presentation from us, is because we felt really to analyze President Macron's knocking on the door of BRICS, playing double here and there. So we also felt that needs to be addressed. So we will see you again on Monday. And CNS, EZD, those of you, please, you can suggest also if you have any topics that's burning issues that you think that it needs to be given that Pan-African perspective, suggest the topic for us, write us an email. And then if you are ready also, and suggest the topic, and as well, if you want to be a part of this live streaming, then we can arrange that. Have a good evening, have a good weekend. Bye-bye. And please send your clapping emoji for Kwame for today. Can you do that for me, please? I want you to do that in the chat section. He really deserves. So, give that emoji, clapping or whatever, or a thumbs up for Kwame. So thank you, Kwame, really. How do I do that even from my side? I don't know. Yes, so some of them, they say, thank you, will do. It's fine. So I think even if we are through, they will do it. Thank you. Bye, Kwame.